Great. It's great to be here, and thank you very much, Sabella, for inviting me. So, Sabella asked me to speak with you about how I got started. I actually, come to think of it, I actually grew up in Berkeley on Cedar Street at the corner of Edith, which is about 2 blocks from where Sabella lives now. And we moved away from there long before she moved to Berkeley, but just coincidentally, we lived in the same neighborhoods, or we have lived in the same neighborhood. And the other coincidence was that I went to Garfield Junior High School, which is where Alice Waters has her edible schoolyard. So, but there was no garden there when I was there. How did a kid that grew up in Berkeley and got a degree in anthropology at UC Berkeley and was a school teacher at Punahou School in Honolulu, Hawaii, how did he wind up being a teacher? The answer is very simple. It happened in 2 hours. I started my first farm from the moment of conception to the moment of execution was 2 hours. And I'll tell you how that happened. Bill File was my roommate. He and I actually ran track together at UC Berkeley, and we wound up through totally separate channels and journeys. We wound up both in Honolulu after graduating from college, and I was a school teacher, and he was doing something else and had his own business, and we shared a house in Honolulu. And one Sunday morning, he came to me and said he had some documents in front of him, about 14-page business plan. He said, "We're going to become farmers." And I said, "Tell me more." And he was a philosophy major. I was an anthro major, so he was always coming up with these wild, crazy-ass ideas. And I never took him too seriously, but this one tweaked my imagination. So he described the 100-acre papaya plantation that we were going to have on the Big Island. And I could picture myself driving through the fields in our Jeeps, and then in the evening sitting on the front porch of our plantation estate drinking mint juleps. And so I said, "Yeah, it sounds good. Sign me up." So actually, that wasn't quite that simple. But anyway, we did talk about, we did sort of have those visions during this 2-hour discussion. Anyway, so after about an hour, we said, well, let's get started. So we jumped in the car, went down to Foodland Market, bought 2 papayas, went over to the garden shop and bought some Dixie cups and a shovel, and raced back up to our place. And we cut open the papayas with great ritual. Scooped out the seeds, ate the flesh, and then we planted about 300 papaya seedlings or seeds in 300 Dixie cups in the backyard. All this happened within the course of about 2 hours. I'm sure if I submitted this to the Guinness Book of World Record, it would be the world record for the fastest start of any farm on the planet. And those papayas grew in the backyard, and meanwhile we knew that we had to go find some ground to transplant it on. Anyway, make a long story short, one thing led to another, and there was this Japanese businessman that had control of about 35 acres on the other side of Oahu. He wanted us to farm corn over there. So we abandoned the papayas in the backyard because we needed ground, and this guy had ground. So we decided to go with him and go with his program and plant corn. So we were doing all kinds of research and looking for equipment. One of the things I looked for was there was a corn harvester. International Harvester had a corn harvester in a town called Brentwood in California. I had never heard of it, but it wasn't too far from where I grew up in El Cerrito. It was in the same county, and I was going to be coming to California that summer anyway to hike in the Sierra Nevadas. So I told Bill I'd check out this corn harvester. Well, it turns out it was on a corner about 100 yards from where I'm currently farming. And I didn't really wind up in Brentwood until about 5 or 6 years later. So these were totally separate, unrelated events, but they were just, it's weird how coincidences happen like that. So anyway, make a long story short, Bill and I didn't get the corn farm going, and that deal fell through. We realized that this sharp businessman was just trying to take advantage of two very naive, young, sort of energetic and passionate, but dumb beginning farmers. So what we wound up with was a 1/4 acre of ground next to a Chinese cemetery in Manoa Valley, which is right up behind the University of Hawaii. But it was about 3 or 4 miles from where we live. So, and one of those other coincidences of the story, my current farm, Frog Hollow Farm, is right next to the Brentwood Cemetery. So both of my farms are right next to the cemetery. Anyway, make a long story short, now about 40 some odd years later, Bill File is still farming on Molokai, and I'm still I'm still in business too here in California. So it can be done. Neither one of us had any knowledge of agriculture. When I bought my first 13 acres in Brentwood and went out there to plant trees, I had no idea what I was doing. I knew which end of the shovel went into the ground. That was about it. So, and Sabella's absolutely right. I'm still a beginning farmer. After 40 years out here, I still feel like every day is a learning experience for me. We're constantly trying new things at Frog Hollow Farm, and certainly one of the most exciting ideas that has come my way in a long, long time is this collaboration with Sabella and Sage in our desire to bring new young people into agriculture. By the way, is Marlene still here? Marlene, are you still here? There she is. Marlene works me. She's pretty young, and I think she's not as much of a beginner as I was when I first started farming. She's actually had several years of farming experience. But anyway, she's working for us out there, and she's doing a great job. She's got about an acre under her control and her expertise and her guidance and her labor. So we've actually, in a way, started our own ag park at Frog Hollow Farm, and we're hoping to collaborate in a very serious way with cooperating with Sabella and Sage and some other institutions in the area. No, I'm done. I'm done. Unless anybody has any questions.
Well, I totally encourage you to come and talk with Al. I mean, he really does have extraordinary stories about getting farming. I would say also is such an inspiration about his marketing, about his, he has a restaurant in the Ferry Building, and he has an extraordinary whole sort of pastry business and value-added business. And I mean, it really takes tremendous sort of innovation and initiative, and there are lots of routes to follow. So I think Al is one of the people who have certainly, and his wife Becky, have really inspired the growers and who give such great support. So Al, thank you so much. So now a number of you, there's a lot of people here to thank. So so what about the folks who've have the